So
Never shall innocent blood be shed, yet the blood of the wicked shall flow like a river. The three shall spread their blackened wings and be the vengeful striking hammer of God.
You people have been chosen to reveal our existence to the world. You will witness what happens here today, and you will tell of it later. All eyes to the front.
You must watch, dear. It'll all be over soon.
Now you will receive us.
We do not ask for your poor or your hungry.
We do not want your tired and sick.
It is your corrupt we claim.
It is your evil that will be sought by us.
With every breath, we shall hunt them down.
Each day, we will spill their blood till it rains down from the skies.
Do not kill, do not rape, do not steal. These are principles which every man of every faith can embrace.
These are not polite suggestions. These are codes of behavior. And those of you that ignore them will pay the dearest cost.
There are varying degrees of evil. We urge you lesser forms of filth, not to push the bounds and cross over into true corruption, into our domain.
For if you do, one day you will look behind you and you will see we three. And on that day, you will reap it.
And we will send you to whatever God you wish.
And shepherds we shall be, for thee, my Lord, for thee. Power hath descended forth from thy hand. Therefore may swiftly carry out thy command. So we shall flow ever forth to thee, and teeming with souls shall it ever be.
In nomine Patri.
Et Filii, Spiritus Sancti.
How far are we going to take this, Star?
The question is not how far. The question is, do you possess the Constitution? The depth of faith to go as far as is needed?
Oh, gentlemen, I'll move myself there. Oh, thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Oh, what a topic we have tonight. Male concubinage. Marriage, as it is currently in the West and in other places of the world, equals male concubinage. And by the way, you will find out for sure if she leaves your butt. But
Nick, is this real or is this fiction?
no, unfortunately, it is a very pressing and real reality that many men face here currently in the West and around the world. They thought they signed up for one thing and they got another. A bait and switch. They thought they signed up for marriage as it is traditionally, historically, and naturally understood, but instead, they're the man in the white dress, leashed to a woman wearing the suit and pants. And once she kicks you to the curb, she really, the ball and chain really does come into an effect.
This sounds like a used car salesman selling you this
I'm giving
cream
you a little
puff,
hype.
and it's going to be reliable, and it's going to serve you well and do all this, and it's nothing but a headache after you buy the car. You're buying a dream, and you've been sold a bill of goods.
Yes. And your priest or pastor made you sign the marriage slash concubinage contract for involuntary servitude. In some ways, now in that current relation, but especially once she kicks you to the curb, especially if you have children.
Nick, when you were a pastor, did you speak with this much passion from the pulpit?
Even more so. I didn't like microphones. So when I first started preaching, I was in very old churches in Mississippi. No speaker system. A lot of them had no AC, or they installed a mediocre AC in a 19th century building, right? I was up there sweating, huffing, and puffing, and I had to look to the last person on the last row and speak so so that they could hear me.
So your fire and brimstone did reach the last row in the church.
Absolutely. Pastor, why are you so hard on me? I'm like, because it's the truth. And I had to preach this to myself. I don't know how many times before I preached it to you. It cut just as bad, if not worse, against me. I had to repent before I even showed up to speak to you this message. A conviction that you may receive. I'm telling you, I have received the same conviction. It's the double-edged sword, cuts both ways.
Well, Nick, you're sure full of the Holy Spirit tonight.
Oh, gosh.
He's been like this in the chat for days, by the way, guys. He's been working himself up to this one.
It's been stewing in the back burner for a long time. And I'm just making more and more connections as the days go by. It's like, what? Because, the effect of a system, what is a system? What's the purpose of a system, Plutarch or Steve?
What it does.
Okay, so what can account for what it does? How could you actually have a real traditional historical biblical marriage? I know you might have it in the eyes of God. That's for you, fine, whatever, But before a court of law, the system is what the purpose of a system is what it does. And what does it do? And what are the laws enforced? We're going to get to that.
It really separates men from the leadership role in their families, and it destroys families, destroys patriarchy. That's what happens.
Yeah.
That's what always happens. Is that the purpose? Well, according to Plutarch, if that's what happens, that is the purpose.
I don't like it.
Smoking Patriots got me right here. All right, so let's open up to 1 Peter chapter 3. I was anticipating this. All right, 1 Peter chapter 3. Not 1 John. Come on. There, chapter 3. This talks about the traditional, historical, natural law, creational, law abiding estate of marriage according to God's holy word. Likewise, ye wives, be in subjection to your own husbands, that if any obey not the word, they also may, without the word, be won by the conversation. That means behavior. This is King James English. The conversation of the wise, while they behold your chaste conversation. Again, that's behavior, coupled with fear, whose adorning, let it not be the outward adorning of the plaiting of the hair and the wearing of gold, or of putting on of apparel, but let it be the hidden man of the heart, and that which is not corruptible, even the ornament of a meek and quiet spirit, which is in the sight of God of great price. For after this manner, in the old time, the holy women also, who trusted in God, adorned themselves, being in subjection unto their own husbands. Verse 6, it gives an example, even as Sarah obeyed Abraham, calling him Lord, whose daughters ye are, as long as ye do well and are not afraid with any amazements. Likewise, ye husbands, dwell with them according to knowledge, giving honor unto the wife as unto the weaker vessel, and as being heirs together of the grace of life, that your prayers be not hindered. I could do Ephesians 5. I could do the household codes and stuff. We can get to that. I can go to Numbers 30 and Genesis 2. The whole point is, that's how it is. That's how God understands
Wait a
marriage to be. That
minute,
is a
Nick.
proper marriage. A man and a woman. That's the hierarchy.
That's the Old Testament.
That's the New Testament. 1 Peter
Right.
chapter 3.
Well, they're referring to the Old Testament. We know everything
As in
changed when it
effect.
came to New Testament.
Yeah, that's the antinomians and Anabaptist reading. But it lies in the face of that. That's what he's telling them to do now and referencing the Old Testament of old.
Well, the truth doesn't change. Is that what you're telling me?
Oh, I mean, God is truth and God is perfect and eternal? I guess so.
Oh, man. There's a lot of Christians that are just going to have problems with that.
Yeah, a
The
lot of
New
them are going to burn in
Testament
hell.
truth and modernity hasn't given us new insights into like progressivism and acceptance and diversity and inclusion and all this stuff. You seem to be against that.
Well, pathway unto heaven is with faithfulness to Christ and not being ashamed of his word. The highway to hell is wide open. And you're on the highway to hell. ACDC, right? But what you see here in First Peter chapter 3 and in reference in the Old Testament is this natural hierarchy, which you see exemplified in First Corinthians chapter 11, which I might as well quote now. All right. We're talking about hierarchy here. But I would have you know that the head of every man is Christ, and the head of the woman is the man, and the head of Christ is God. But every man praying or prophesying, having his head covered, dishonoreth his head. But every woman that prayeth or prophesieth with her head uncovered, dishonoreth her head. For this is even all one as if she were shaven. For if the woman be not covered, let her also be shorn. But if it be a shame for a woman to be shorn or shaven, let her be covered. For a man indeed ought not to cover his head, for as much as he is the image and glory of God. But the woman is the glory of the man. This is God's hierarchical, creational, natural order. This is the natural law reflected in the nations across time. This is the natural order reflected in the nature of man and woman together in the marital relation itself. What is hierarchy,
Okay.
guys?
I don't know. Before we get there, Nick, you were married.
Yes.
Was your ex-wife your glory, or was she your master?
It was supposed to be my glory, but practically she attempted to be my master. And currently, under the state, she is the overseer of her involuntary servant.
Of your involuntary servitude.
Exactly.
Okay. So I guess that relates to your question. What is hierarchy? Well, it seems like you're living in a hierarchy, Nick. You're just not on top.
No, it's a subverted hierarchy, contrary to God's natural law. It is a tyranny that needs to be overthrown by faithful men. It is an abomination in the sight of God. So the woman rules over the man.
Well, doesn't God allow that?
Yeah, according to his providence, does not mean he gives his moral stamp upon it. It is given to us in his providence, yet he is not the author nor doer of evil.
So this has happened in the past in history where women have ruled over men.
Absolutely. You can think of Bloody Mary. You can think of Elizabeth. You can think of Jezebel ruling over King Ahab. You can think of Athaliah,
How did
what she did
those
to the seed of Israel.
how did it turn out when women ruled over men?
It never turns out well, ultimately. People might say, well, it worked out well, maybe for a little bit, for some things in that time, but ultimately does not play out well for the generations afterwards. It causes chaos. They are not suited to rule. God has established an hierarchy. There's rulers, magistrates, higher and lesser magistrates. You can think of those as kings or presidents or congressmen, senators. Then you have your state governors or whatever, dukes or counts and barons. Okay. Those are your magistrates. They have a proper rule given to them by God to do what is according to his will, according to his natural order or natural law for the good of the people.
Well, it seems like this is similar to Genesis 3, where Adam was created first and given dominion, and Eve was created second out of Adam and was to be his helpmate. And then we can get into the curse. But there seems to be a hierarchy from the very
Yeah.
beginning.
I mean, I quoted 1 Corinthians chapter 11, and that played out in the Old Testament as I quoted 1 Peter chapter 3, and it was enforced in the New Testament as well. A standard for Christians, a standard for all God's people, because it not just reflects the Christian order, but also what God had ordained the natural order to be. Look,
So, Nick, do
hierarchy
you
is
have some
inevitable.
slides and whatnot that you're going
Oh,
to
I've got a
further
whole lot.
develop this?
I got a whole lot, but let's talk about natural law first. I have a few quotes I want to give. We talked about a hierarchy, the natural order in family, church, and commonwealth. Okay, superiors, inferiors, and equals, according to the Westminster Standards. You can see those. This is Girolamo Zanchi, Protestant reformer. He says natural law is the will of God and consequently the divine rule and principle for knowing what to do and what not to do. It, namely, the knowledge of what is good or bad, fair or unfair, upright or shameful, was inscribed upon the hearts of all people by God Himself also after the fall. For this reason, we are all universally taught what activity should be pursued and what should be avoided. That is, to do one thing and avoid another. And we know that we are obligated and pushed to act for the glory of God, our own good, and the welfare of our neighbor, both in private and in public. In addition, we know that if we do what should be avoided or avoid what we should do, we are condemned. But if we do the opposite, we are defended and absolved. That's a reformer. I'm going to give you some quotes from a Roman Catholic. I actually like this work. I'm going to quote it more extensively later on by Heinrich A. Rahmann, published in 1946. And no, he's not the mustache follower. He actually fled there. He fled from there. Okay. And he taught here at Georgetown University. Cicero could thus write. So this is Cicero, not a Christian, guys. If the principles of justice were founded on the decrees of peoples, the edicts of princes, or the decisions of judges, then justice would sanction robbery and adultery and forgery of wills, in case these acts were approved by the votes or decrees of the populace. But if so great a power belongs to the decisions and decrees of fools, that the laws of nature can be changed by their votes, then why do they not ordain that what is bad and baneful shall be considered good and salutary? Or if a law can make justice out of injustice, can it not also make good out of bad? But in fact, we can perceive the difference between good laws and bad by referring them to no other standard than nature. Indeed, it is not merely justice and injustice which are distinguished by nature, but also, and without exception, things which are honorable and dishonorable. For since an intelligence common to us all makes things known to us and formulates them in our minds, honorable actions are ascribed to us, virtue, and dishonorable actions to vice. And only a madman would conclude that these judgments are matters of opinion and not fixed by nature. Again, not a Christian.
What?
That
What
was
do you mean, not
Cicero.
a Christian?
Cicero was not a Christian.
Oh,
Talking about 1800 years ago, not further. Rahman, he was a Roman Catholic, I believe. He writes, he talks about natural law. He says, these norms constitute natural law insofar as such regulations pertain as immediately necessary to the essential nature an essential fulfillment of man in the vita oikonomia, and he has in parentheses, marriage, family, and occupational groups organizing themselves according to social functions in the service of the common good for the peaceful ordering of the people. And he ends the parentheses. And in political life, and he mentions state and international community. Since these regulations are necessary, their realization, improvement, and maintenance against lawbreakers are enforceable by the public authorities. And lastly, he writes, for a long time, natural law remained the critical norm for common law judges. He talks about that used in the ecclesiastical courts and Christian courts, applying canon law imbued with the idea of natural law. And he says, according to Byzantine legal theory, the emperor as lex viva was above and not under the law, a conception which might be used by the king to establish his supremacy over the law. But the Christian elements of the common law continued to keep alive in the minds of the judges the traditional belief in the supremacy of natural law. Thus, Sir Edward Coke upheld in Bonham's case, 1610 AD, the general principle that statutes are void if they do not conform to the natural law. So hence we've talked about the natural law, we've talked about hierarchy, we've talked about the household structure. Well, okay, what's the household structure? Aristotle and the Christians agree that it is what household is the family. You have what in the family, guys?
A structure should be a
Yeah, well,
man, woman, child. I don't know. What are you looking for?
well, in Ephesians 5 through 6 and Colossians 3 through 4, they talk about husbands and wives, superiors and inferiors, parents and children, superiors, inferiors, and masters and servants, or slaves, superiors and inferiors. These are the household codes, and they recognize these relations. And I tell you that as much as we say, according to the 13th Amendment, that it doesn't exist, it still does, just in a more pernicious and roundabout way. Hence, we have male concubinage, not actually real marriage today, because the state has rejected the natural law for the foundation of marriage. You think of Obergefell. The state has rejected the natural law, but you'll notice that they'll use it later, ex post facto, especially on the men. I have some slides now. All right. We're talking about slavery, servitude, involuntary servitude, concubinage, and another category. So let's go to the categories of men in the ancient world. Now, I'll share my screen here, right here, or this tab instead, and I'm going to put this on the screen. So yeah, I chat GPT this. I'm going to zoom in a bit. Zoom in even more. All right.
Yeah, right there.
What's the difference between, I said, a concubine, male involuntary servitude, and a eunuch? The primary differences between a eunuch, a male slave, and a male concubine lie in their physical state, their specific roles in historic societies, and their relationship to power. Oh no. Eunuchs were castrated males, serving as trusted, non-threatening palace officials or guards. Involuntary servitude males were male slaves, those Slavics, were general laborers or domestic servants without freedom, encompassing all involuntary servitude. Now, this didn't exist in Israel. Male concubines were in various historical contexts males kept for sexual companionship, pleasure, and often as a status symbol, sometimes holding a position between a Slavic person, if you get my drift, and a lower ranking partner. I'm going to suggest that this is alive and well today, this last part. Sometimes holding a position between an involuntary servitude man and a lower ranking partner. Blah, blah,
I
blah.
don't know, Nick. Really?
Yeah.
Seems like a lot of Christian men end up married to Christian women who cut them off from any sexual activities. So it seems like women try to make them more eunuchs than concubines.
Well, again, it's a subordinate function. This abomination really has only been propped up in our modern day. And so in some ways, at times they'll serve as eunuchs, even though they are quote unquote married. But they serve as eunuchs really because she has no interest in the male concubine at present. And when she gets rid of him, he actually results to what he really is. A male concubine, was also of lower status than the master. Hence, he was an involuntary servant. He was a Slavic person, quote unquote, if you get my drift. Have no legal rights over their own life or children, often acquired through war, the slave or Slavic trade, involuntary servitude trade, which we call marriage, so-called marriage today. They sign the contract thinking it's one thing, but they end up really and legally something else, even though it might carry the name marriage. Okay, well, I'll go to the next slide. All right, I'll share this one. I'll zoom in a bit. All right. This is from Noah's Webster 1828 dictionary. Concubine, noun, Latin, to lie together, to lie down. What? First definition, a woman who cohabits with a man without the authority of a legal marriage, a woman kept for lewd purposes, a kept mistress. Secondly, a wife of inferior condition, a lawful wife, but not united to the man by the usual ceremonies and of inferior condition. Such were Hagar and Keturah, the concubines of Abraham, and such concubines were allowed by the Roman law. Except flip this for men. Have that in your mind. Next slide. I'll go this one, actually. Let's share this one first, actually. Okay. Slavery. YouTube has some weird things, but it says bondage, the state of entire subjection of one person to the will of another. That is the obligation to labor for the benefit of the master without the contract of consent of the servant. This estate may proceed from crimes, from captivity, or from debt. This condition is also voluntary or involuntary. Voluntary when a person sells or yields his own person to the absolute command of another. It has a sense of voluntariness in our modern day, but under a deception of marriage. It's a deception where you think you're going to be the head And not that she's going to be, your involuntary servant, but yeah, you're the head and she's under you. But instead, now, through the marriage contract, you yield your own person to the absolute command of another. And we'll get into why the laws that are in place now, which make that happen. And it says involuntary when he's placed under the absolute power of another without his own consent. This no longer exists in Great Britain or in the northern states of America. And the second definition is the office of that Slavic thing, drudgery. Interesting, guys. We have these definitions. I'm trying to give the audience an understanding of what these terms mean. So when we get to the nitty and gritty, you'd be like, wow, that's what's really going on. Despite the label of marriage, it's actually something else. Let's go to Rollo Tomasi. Because I'm going to check my show notes, make sure I'm on the right. There we go. Well, before we get there, I'm going to stop sharing and we're going to talk about, I have it in my show notes. What are the consequences? What's the problem of marriage today impacted by the consequences and laws in effect for men? So you guys, you get married, right? What does the law say you can do? What does the law actually say?
You mean like what rights do I have? I'm not aware of anything that the law says I can do.
In the eyes of the law. Or more particularly, what can't you do?
Oh, there's lots of things I can't do.
Huh? Like?
Oh, well, you can't raise hands on her, shall we say?
Yeah. But a lot of times she can do it to you unless she's videotaped. She'll probably get away with it.
Well, but that's because the law says that if there's no proof of her doing it, then it must be the man who instigated it somehow. This is case law I'm talking about, not.
Yeah, and also in somewhat reference to Duluth family law and other laws in different states. So, a woman can accuse the head of the family, the patriarch, the husband, of all sorts of wickedness, especially domestic, abuse, and many times it didn't happen, or it's extremely over exaggerated. And what happens? Do you really have authority in your family? Are you really married? Are you really the head of the household? What happens, Steve?
Well, I don't know. What? No, I mean, your wife can actually be arrested and spend the night in jail for assault, and be charged with assault. And you can have scratches on your body that are photographed by the police and everything. And then she can say she did that because she was afraid of you. And all the charges against her will actually be dropped. And then she can use this fear of you to obtain a restraining order and obtain temporary custody of the kids. It turns into permanent custody.
And you could be
it
like
happened to me.
Yeah,
What?
I know. And you could be like me, where she's actually beating the crap out of you and you're running away. And she admits to a history of beating you, right? In the very police report. Yet, what do? They come even after the pastor, right? I'm a head of a church,
yeah.
right? But I'm also head of a family, but it doesn't matter. Let's invade the church, get that bad man because she screamed, "Oh, bad man, I'm afraid." Even as
Yes, she She's afraid while she's beating your ass.
Make
And
it
they
make sense.
believe her, even though they don't believe any damage done to you.
Absolutely.
If they're beating you, they're not afraid.
Well, obviously, but the court see it differently, Plutarch.
Well, that's just
Hey.
talking about the confabulations of man versus logic. We created a situation where the law says that has to be true. Even if it's not, we all have to accept this imposed reality that it is because the law says it is.
So, is it bad if a man wants his wife to be a stay-at-home mom and then she objects and says he's being financially or whatever controlling, and the state can come in and say, no, you can't tell her what to do. She can get a job if she wants. Or, hey, I have these finances. I don't want her to have access to because I work for it, right? And I'll give her an allotment, an allowance each week, take care of daily necessities. She's never going to want for anything, but she could cry out, what, guys?
Caboose?
Yeah.
Wait, hold on, Nick. If a man wants his wife to stay at home, that's like a desire of his. And then she actually does stay at home and he provides for her. Remember, it's a want, it's a desire.
She can change her mind at any
Doesn't
time, right?
mean he forced her to stay home, forced her not to have a
Nope.
job. She can still get a job. You can say, well, I'd like our family structured this way. If you want to, if I'd like you to stay home, raise the kids. I'll provide, I'll do my duty. You do the home duties. I'll do the outside duties. But then if you get divorced, oh my God, I gave up my career and everything for this man, and he forced me to stay home, which is complete and utter bullshit in 99% of situations.
Yeah. And they'll use that against you to extract your involuntary servitude for a higher amount, not before judicial court, but through somebody that doesn't even care about your actual property, administrative courts, an administrative judge, which is an abomination. Many times they're women. Anything. And also, but if a man cries out, well, she's not giving me enough money.
What a pathetic man.
Are
You
the
have to
courts
be a
going to get
very pathetic man to complain about a woman.
I'm
I mean, what
just
kind of
saying,
a weak
if it was
man are
reversed,
you
right?
if you're complaining that a woman controls you and is not giving you enough money? You should just be a bigger man, just go out, work harder, and do better.
Just saying, if the roles were reversed, right? They'd be laughing. I've never seen it. Never seen. Okay, now, hey, we're struggling with, say, a lot. This happens in a lot of marriages. It happened in mine. Say, hey, we're struggling with physical, sexual intimacy, and the guy says, hey, I kind of want to. Let's do something tonight. Let's do something tonight. Let's do something tonight. Thousandth time, right? And oh, he rolls over in his sleep and spoons her. What's she gonna cry out, guys?
Unwanted advance.
Yeah, there you go. Don't touch me. I don't wanna.
I mean,
That is rape. That is rape, guys.
Obviously the husband doesn't respect his wife's body and her autonomy.
Hey, but if the roles were reversed before a court of law, right? I'm just saying.
Yeah, okay. So you're saying if a wife is a bit amorous,
Hmm.
she wakes up the man, he's probably not going to accuse her of depriving him of sleep.
Hey, sometimes they
But
like something
if
polished, you know?
he is feeling a little frisky, he can be accused of anything under the sun if she's not in the mood.
Or she could say she's in the mood, but later on she changes her mind that she wasn't in the mood, you know, 6 months to 2 years ago or 10 years ago.
Oh,
Man, guys, this will be used against you. Not necessarily in an actual judicial case, although it could, I guess, but normally in the administrative courts where they paint you to be this bad, evil patriarch guy that has normal desires and never really did anything. But the mere accusation versus the accusations she levels, the accusations you level against her, even though you might have proof, she doesn't even have to have proof and can level the same exact accusations. And by the way, guys, here comes the ball and chain. You are now, chances are, might have lost custody of your kids, might not ever be able to see them again, or maybe on a visitational basis, or perhaps a supervised visitational basis, which is kidnapping without a judicial case. But Baskerville kind of takes that up later. But these are the laws that are against you. The law says that you're so-called equal, but you're really not.
so she has more rights. A woman has more rights than a man because she has a
Right.
right of retroactive refusal, but a man does
Absolutely.
not.
And everything that you might have done right and providing and protecting and doing all the things that, a head of the household, a father, a husband should do. No, no, no. Those will be used against you to further indenture yourself involuntarily as a male. You'll go from the male concubine in the eyes of the law to, in fact, involuntary servitude, where your kids are kidnapped. But how did we get here? Well, Rollo kind of picks up this point, and I'll share my screen here. There we go. And I'll add this to the stage. This is Rollo Tomasi. It says men abdicated more and more authority to women in their respective religions by inch or by mile. The religious mechanism that made individual men 100% responsible with 0% authority could now be applied to religions on a whole. The perception of old order religion being a misogynistic patriarchal means of maintaining male oppressive power over historically victimized women is still a valuable tool for gynocentrism in this new order. That cliched perception of evil patriarchy only legitimizes the push for men's abdication of authority while emphasizing their duty to responsibility for women, family, and church. The message became a constant droning of men must do better. As a result, generations of men either abandoned religion to women or they became one of the dwindling numbers of men in churches still locked in an endless tail chasing of trying to live up to the restitution expectations of women for the sins of their fathers. So all you tradcons say, "Oh, we're better." No, no, no. This is the reality in your churches. This is what your pastors and your priests and your elders enforce. You can't have authority. The state says you can't have authority. She says you can't have authority. And the state says you can't. Next, Rollo says this: the biggest, most deliberate misconception of patriarchy that it is a fundamentally an androcentric system. Feminism, however, you could say feminism has never been about equality. By definition, feminism is gynocentric and female primary. Patriarchy is balanced. That's Rollo Tomasi. And for the coup de grace of Rollo, responsibility without authority is slavery. I think he hit the nail on the head.
Well, Rollo is not a biblical authority. He doesn't really go into scripture and all that. He professes to be a Christian. Okay, I accept that. But he's not really a spokesman for Christianity.
No.
He understands it. But I guess my observation is Rollo arrived at this understanding based on observation, reason, and logic, not based on blind acceptance of Christianity or what the Bible says. Would you agree?
I agree.
I mean, certainly, if
Making observations.
Truth exists, you should be able to discover the truth from multiple paths to get there. You can follow the Bible to get to the truth. You should be able to follow reason and logic to also arrive at the same point. Because if it's really true, if it's really natural law, if it exists from the very beginning, if it's truth that's just intertwined and part of the universe, it can't be escaped. And no matter which direction, if you're seeking knowledge and understanding, it should all lead you to the truth.
True. You're correct, Steve. What is the natural law? It should lead you to the truth using the reason that God has endowed you with and observing what's going on around you. And he says this about marriage. Responsibility without authority is slavery. Rollo Tomasi. He's speaking about marriage. Well, how can you be married and in that estate? Well, there's only one term that really fits. And again, that is male concubinage. And by the way, both Steve and I have found out afterwards, since male concubines are essentially in God's law, they are actually it's a form of uh, Slavicness, Slavery. But it has a little perks in the marital estate if you're one of those that becomes married. Oh, you have favors and you can be more highly exalted, but once you're kicked to the curb, right? Once they're done with you, you go back to the estate that you really are, which is unfortunately you become involuntary servitude to the female and the state, perhaps with no rights to your children, perhaps with little rights, but you have all these responsibility, but you really have no authority over your own children, even if you see them. And that's the state I lived in. That's the state Steve lived in, and many, many millions of men in the United States and even more around the world.
Oh, yes. You're not even free, really, because oftentimes the extraction of resources is set so high that you can't make it without living in poverty. And if you have any glitch in your employment, out of a job for a month, 2 months, 6 months, you're going to fall behind. As soon as you fall behind, you are subject to arrest and imprisonment. And, gee, you can't get a passport. Okay, so your freedom is absolutely restricted. Tell me you're still a free man.
Can you be a free man and they kidnap your children without a criminal case? Where they take your property. I mean, not saying your children are just merely property, but they do belong to your estate of the household, and you're the head of the household, natural law accordingly. And of course, according to the natural laws, head of the household, you're to provide for them. But they take that provision, but they say, no, you have no authority here. And by the way, the kids are no longer yours. Kidnapped without trial, enslaved without trial.
Yeah, okay, we got to be careful here. Because I'm going to push back on something. It's our modern sensibilities that says people cannot be property. That's an American mindset based on Civil War and all the things that came with that. In biblical, strictly in the Bible, yes,
Tenth
absolutely.
Commandment.
People can be property. Your children actually are a man's property.
I'll read it
His
for
wife is his property. She belongs to him.
you. All
And
right.
in some ways, he belongs to her. Property, being property, is, come on, let's just take it within reason. And usually, a husband, definition of the word husband, animal husbandry. Oh, gee, that's a owner of livestock. What is animal husbandry? It's the caretaker of the livestock. It's his property, but it's his duty and obligation to care for them. A husband
Absolutely.
is a man that cares for those under his direction and those
the
that are
duties of a
his
superior.
property. Okay, don't take it to the extreme and say, oh my God, this is the end of the world. No, it's natural. Come on.
Yeah, you see this in the Westminster Standards, the duties of superiors to inferiors, and you see this with, parents to children, husbands to wives, so on and so forth. But also the 10th commandment, I'm going to note here when it says his maidservant or his this and his that, in Hebrew, that's a third masculine singular. So it says, thou shalt not covet thy neighbor's house, thou shalt not covet thy neighbor's wife, nor his manservant, nor his maidservant, nor his ox, nor his ass, nor anything that is thy neighbor's, assuming that the man is the head of the household. Why does it say thy neighbor's wife? Oh, I mean, it's a man, right? And you're coveting the man's wife.
Well,
It's
it says house
assuming,
first, wife next. Both
yes,
are items of property.
exactly.
Property law.
Yes, that's the 10th commandment. And if you want to reject the word of God, that's on you.
I don't have a problem with that.
I know you don't, Steve. That was in general. So in general.
A lot of people do. They get
Yep.
they get their panties in a twist over this one.
Yes.
They get their
Hey,
panties in
Steve.
a bunch selectively over this one, because I mean, at least look, the idea that, because we hear the same thing from communists too. It's like, okay, if or my personal favorite, what was going on this weekend was Elon was coming out and saying, oh, well, UBI, it's going to solve all the problems. You'll be able to have your own personal chef. Well, if I can have my own personal chef, can't my personal chef have a personal chef who has a personal chef, right? And and you can see,
Nauseum, right.
you're right. You can see how ridiculous this gets. And so at some point, you have to have an authority that says, okay, you get a personal chef and you don't. Right now, that authority we use is how much money you have. Okay. But what they're saying, but that's what women want. Women want the personal chef. They want the maid. They want the nanny, right? They want all those things to just be provided for them. And right now we use men at a resource extraction from men to do that. But that system is falling apart as more and more men say, yeah, fuck this shit. We're just not going to get married at all. Why?
Why are they going to sign up for male concubinage and slavery?
Right. And so the actual answer is this whole UBI means we all get personal chefs. Oh, so we have to make personal chefs our slaves now? Because the personal chef is not going to want to be a personal chef. They're going to want to go do something else, right? No, money is exchanged for work that you do. And work is not supposed to be something that you enjoy all the time. I do not enjoy my job all the time. Some days I do. Yesterday I did not. It happens, guys. But it is feminine to say, oh, well, you should never have to work a day in your life, and any work you do should be only work that you want to do. That is the feminine ideal, and it never works. It never works, because in order to do that, you have to make somebody your slave. Or Elon has to go out and say, well, you, my personal chef, have to work for me, but I don't want to. I want to do this other thing, and you're giving me UBI. No. I will take away your UBI if you don't work. That's what's actually going to happen. If you don't work for me, I will take away your UBI. Oh, and does anyone for a second think that if a girl divorces a guy under the UBI system, that the state will not direct his UBI to her? For fuck's sake, men, wake the fuck. That is the first thing that's going to be in the law. Oh, the court says she gets your UBI now, and now you are a slave because you can't do anything else, and because there's no work, we've made sure. So you get to go work in the robot factory for nothing, for whatever food and shelter they provide you.
You see, when a man has a stay-at-home wife, she is forced to stay in the household and do all those things all day long. He wakes up 6 a.m., gets ready, commutes that hour to fun, and then he has to fun all day long, and he doesn't get home till 6 p.m. because he's been funning all day long. He's not going to work. He's going to fun. And then, if she wants to get divorced, well, now he's forced to fun for her forever. Well, at least, he has to fun really hard so he can provide that child support. Men don't work, they just fun.
Yes, ladies, we go to work and break our bodies and every day because it's fun. That, by the way, is propaganda. This idea that men go to work to have fun was propaganda to convince women that going into the workforce would be good. Oh, women, just come to work, it'll be fun. And then we had to create email jobs for women because the women didn't actually want to do the work that men were doing. They got there, found it wasn't fun, and they left in a couple years to go have babies. Oh, we can't have that. No. Work being fun is just propaganda. That's all it is. I get riled up about this because Rollo is right here, and the whole world hinges on this idea right now. Elon's future, his future vision relies on what this statement on screen of Rollo's being true or being true. He has to have it. or sorry, it relies on it being false. Everyone needs
Being
this to be
false.
false.
Like, what?
Yeah, sorry.
Okay.
No, sorry. I'm thinking ahead of
Oh,
myself here.
It's like a
oh
communist
man,
utopian vision.
It
It's the
is. Yeah.
Marxist utopian vision in modern form of
Plutarch,
technology.
you're popping my bubble here. So you're okay. The implication is Elon is not the savior of mankind. And then if I extrapolate from that, Trump is not the savior of mankind either.
Elon, in a recent interview, I don't remember who it was with. He actually said, you know, you guys do realize that I'm actually a socialist, right? And I just went, yeah, I believe it. So they have this and by the way, the communist Marxist utopia specifically requires post-scarcity abundance, and you're going to hear the word abundance over a lot of the next few years. But in Marx's progression, capitalism was necessary to bootstrap to the point where you could make automation. Socialism is the stage in between capitalism and communism, where the state has to come in and take control of the means of production in order to ensure that the production is put towards trying to make the post-scarcity abundance possible, right? So because the idea being was the capitalists would never actually agree for their machines to be used this way, which is probably true. And so once you get through the socialistic period of building up to building up to the ability to have post scarcity, then once you reach it, post scarcity, you can then go into this utopia where and by the way, this is why Frederick Engels and Marx were so enamored of the idea of the matriarchy, because if you live in a patriarchy, this doesn't work. None of their process works. But if the matriarchy is true, then you can have responsibility without authority. It's a necessary precursor to a matriarchy. So,
yeah, and what's the historical matriarchy consist of? Huts in Africa?
Pretty much, or the Amazon, either one. But here's the thing. There is a very good reason why every communist you talk about is very okay with slavery. They don't mean it. They don't mind white men being destroyed in courts because they don't mind it because they need it. You are the necessary grist for the mill to get them to their communist utopia.
Well, a couple points here.
Dictator.
Slavery, control, implementation, management is actually a science. And it has been studied. And one of the means, and I can't prove this, it's my opinion, I read it someplace, I adopted it, that in pre-1860 US, when it existed here, it had been studied for hundreds of years. And the means that they kept it in place was to actually put the woman in charge of the family and give her a greater authority within the family to keep the men down. And that was actually implemented. I mean, and look at Black people today. That dynamic in many ways still exists.
Also, the family courts first attacked the Black communities, especially the Black family, with their so-called free money. So it was about destroying them, but it affected all of us in the end, just 10 years behind.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. I mean, there's a lot to this. And then as to Elon Musk, we think, he's South African. Well, yeah, he came here from South Africa. His father came here from was South African, but his grandfather came from Canada, Saskatchewan, Canada. His grandfather was actually one of the head people in the technocracy movement in Saskatchewan. I think it was in the 1920s. Technocracy is a thing. It's control of people through information, management, or control of energy and resources. Oh,
Come on, we
think
experienced 2020, guys. Don't you
think
remember that?
energy,
2020, 2022.
uh, carbon taxes, uh, green stuff, green, the taxing you for your pollution, CBDCs, central bank digital currencies, all this social score, all this stuff, tracking information. That's technocracy. Okay, we hear about it today, but it was actually the concept came from the 1920s. So is Elon still kind of in that same vein? Well, I would say yes. The jury's out. I don't hate the guy. I don't know, but there's a generational thing here. Don't dismiss that.
That's the technocratic elite. Even Francis Schaeffer talked about that, and how shall we then live? I think in the late 1970s, early 1980s. That's the concept of the elite, the bureaucracies that also control society, also in tandem with the elites of the government. I'll keep going, guys. We went all the way from Marxism to Ford. I'm going to go a little bit before that, or in tandem with that, with some Dabney, and how he anticipated where we're at, and actually kind of the structure. Dang, he is kind of right, not only with the estate of marriage, but also man's estate within that. So I'll share this tab right here, and I'll have to zoom in. It's an old slide. Oof. This is from one of our first streams, guys. All right. Jacobin equality and its abolitionism leads to feminism. Again, he's writing in the 19th century. He's probably the most genius theologian in the United States. He says the extreme claim of equality is false and iniquitous. For out of that wide natural diversities of sex and of character must arise a wide difference of natural relations between individuals and the state. To attempt to bestow identical franchises upon all thus appears to be unjust and indeed impossible. It is but a mockery to say that we have bestowed a given franchise upon a person whom nature has disqualified for using it. Or what avail would it be for me to declare that all women have the same natural right with myself to wear a beard and to sing bass when nature has decided that they shall not? Now they're trying with, injections of testosterone to actually kind of do this stuff now. It's very unnatural and abomination. Another place he writes, I argue again that the Jacobin, those were those for equality, kind of an early form of Marxism, you could say, argue again that the Jacobin doctrine leads by logical consequence to female suffrage and to women's rights. And he says again in another place, but the concession of all equal rights to women means simply the destruction of the family, which is the cornerstone of the commonwealth and of civilization. The perfect place for the Marxists to take over and the technocrats. All right, another slide. I'll share this tab. Robert Louis Dabney again on women's rights, women. I'll zoom in. So it will be found, it is no disparagement to woman to say it, that the very traits which fit her to be the angel 19th century. Sorry, guys. Angel of a virtuous home, unfit her to meet the agitations of political life, even as safely as does the more rugged man. The hot glare of publicity and passion will speedily deflower her delicacy and sweetness. Those temptations which her Maker did not form her to bear will debauch her heart, developing a character as much more repulsive than that of the debauched man as the fall has been greater. The politicking woman, unsexed and denaturalized, shorn of the true glory of her femininity, will appear to men as a feeble hybrid mannequin, of all the defects and none of the strength of the male. Instead of being the dear object of his chivalrous affection, she becomes his importunate rival, despised without being feared. This suggests a third consequence, which some of the advocates of the movement even already are bold enough to foreshadow. Women's rights means the abolition of all permanent marriage ties. We are told that Miss Katie Stanton avowed this result, proclaiming it to the invitation of the Young Men's Christian Association of New York. She holds that woman's bondage is not truly dissolved until the marriage bond is annulled. She is thoroughly consistent. Some hoodwinked advocates of her revolution may be blind to the sequence, but it is inevitable. It must follow by this cause, if for no other, that the unsexed politicking woman can never inspire in man that true affection on which marriage should be founded. Men will doubtless be still sensual. That's the problem, guys. But it is simply impossible that they can desire them for the pure and sacred sphere of the wife.
Hey,
That's why
Nick.
guys not yes.
So I did a post about this exact problem earlier today. And
Yes.
so there's been this move in the red pill to say, oh, well, women control the access to both sex and relationships. Okay.
Maybe for simps.
Well, but that's not
It's
what they're
sensual.
saying. Yes, but that's not what they're saying.
Oh,
Because what they're saying here, I'll sorry, Nuke. He says women control access to both sex and relationships. Okay. But
false.
it is false, and it's provably false. And here's how easy it is to prove. Okay. I'm just going to pull up what I wrote here, because there's a line I want to get right. The person who can say no is the person who controls access. Okay. What Dabney's saying here is that these men, I'll put it in modern terms because we're over an hour, we're past the 10-minute mark. These men will happily fuck these women, but they will not give them access to long-term relationships. And I think one of the mistakes we've made that causes confusion is we say, oh, women control access to sex, men control access to relationships. No, women control access to short-term relationships, men control access to long-term relationships. And that goes back to what each party wants. A woman wants access to resources in the long term so that she can be stable and secure. Right. Men want access to short-term relationships because they like to fuck. Okay. When
Sensual.
you start
Sensual, like Dabney's talking about, right?
Right, exactly. So when you come in and you say, oh, well, women actually control access to both. No, that is a not just gynocentric view. That is a fundamentally feminine view. You're literally saying, I believe in a female view of the world. The females want to think that they control access to relationships, and it's a bit of a psyop to say that they do, when you can look at the endless Twitter or TikTok crash outs of these women going, but where have all the good men gone? Well, the good men don't want you, because you have demonstrated that you have been, as Dabney said earlier, you have been deflowered. You have become a brute, basically. That no man wants. And here's the thing: as men, we don't care about your personality as we're blowing your back out. It's really not a big deal to us. Okay, we don't care about your wants and dreams and desires. You are 3 holes that are available to us. Okay, great. Yes, I'm being crass here because I almost want to say clip this and show this to the women, because it and for you women, yes, you do control access to that. You can say
Elena,
no.
you heard it, right?
What? No, I didn't. I
said, Elena, you heard that, right?
Oh. Right. Look, okay. But the moment it switched to you want access to my resources, well, now you're the supplicant. So when a guy comes to you and asks you for sex, he's supplicating, he's asking, right? And in a short-term relationship, men do most of the supplication. Of course she will. So, but in a long-term relationship, that supplication flips. Now the woman is saying, but I want a man to give me this. And now the man has the authority to say, no, I'm not going to give that to you. And that's the difference.
He has to exercise that authority. Most often, he's going to stay under the former dating dynamic where she retains the power.
Yes. And I think for some guys that will work just fine because those guys are desirable to women so that they will say yes enough, often enough that it doesn't bother those guys. But we have to remember that at some point, women are going to catch feels, and then they're going to be the ones asking. I have no problem with guys out here saying, oh yeah, just spin plates. Because here's what they're doing. They're telling women no. Those guys dominate the LTR, the long-term relationship, the LTR. Those guys have the ability to tell women no. But the moment you do that, you destroy the idea that women control access to relationships. No, they don't. They control access to a specific type of relationship. And I think that's the mistake we made. Relationship's kind of a container word for a lot of different things. And when we say, you know, the old red pill construction of sex versus relationships, well, a short-term sexual relationship is a form of relationship. It's just short-term. So that allows that then kind of tricks your brain into saying, oh, well, but a short-term, you know, women control access to that. So clearly, you know, they control. No, they don't. They do not control access to long-term relationships. We can see it in the falling marriage rate. We can see it in the TikTok crash outs. The data on this is incontrovertible and unarguable. And anybody who says it is operating in a feminine frame, hoping to get pussy. Which
sensual, as Dabney calls it.
Yes.
Again, he's writing from the 19th century. He's predicting
kind of
these things as they fall out by consequence.
On its surface, this seems kind of like a paradox. It's actually simple, but it's nuanced. And it's really hard to understand. So, until you can actually get your mind around it and realize the simplicity of man's nature, women's nature, and how it goes wrong, it's going to just twist your mind into knots.
I view this as kind of the there's that meme. It's the bell curve meme, and you've got the Jedi on the right side and the smooth brain on the left side, and in the middle there's the spurg. Just that's kind of how I view this conversation. I think most men on the tails of the curve recognize that this is true. Okay, Dabney was very definitely left tail on the intelligent side of the curve. Okay, But I think if you go ask most men, just on the basis of the data, them not getting married, they would say, yeah, no, that's about right. Women control access.
Have no interest.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And that's not
And
an
they don't even know
IQ
what the
thing.
red pill is. They have no idea what the red pill is.
Right, exactly. They haven't done research. They don't care. They're just going, I'm not interested in this. They are the smooth brain going, this doesn't work for me. I'm not doing it. And the left tail smart guys are going, this will never work for anybody, so we're not doing it. And then you've got kind of the middle of the curve going, blah, 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 but this and that. And it's what Steve was talking about. It's like they're overthinking it to the point of intentionally wrapping themselves too far around the paradox. When the data is easy and clear to just say, oh, and you can get this data as a man. You as a man, you personally, regardless of intellect, can go out into the world and observe exactly what we're talking about. You can see women curving men all the time for sex. Oh no, I can't. No, you're ugly.
Generations of divorce too. So
right,
seeing it.
Right. Well, but see that's the thing. And then they see the male concubinage side of the men who do get married get destroyed. And then all these men are like, oh,
no. No.
Well, here's what I just had a thought. Bear with me for a second. Part of the reason it has taken so long for men to figure out what's going on is because for a very long time, we told men that a divorce was their failure. Now, if women controlled access to relationships, then the failure would be the woman's because she's controlling. She decided. She decided who to marry. Right? So the
never talk about that.
Right.
She actually did. She took a vow, solemn vow before God and congregation was
right. My point here is that what the guys are actually reacting to is the fact that a man chose to marry her. A man chose to give her access to her resources. Now they're not connecting the two. Most men aren't, and they're saying, oh well, he chose to give this woman his resources. Then she chose to use state force to take them from him. Oh, the only way to not have my resources taken from me as a man is to not give them to women. They arrived
at the male concubinage contract, so-called marriage license.
Right. The so-called smooth brains, just by observation, figured out what midwit RPers can't seem to figure out. And that is, you chose the woman, you chose to give your resources to the woman, she then leveraged the power of the state, and now you're screwed. Now you can say, oh, well, she shouldn't have that power of the state. Yeah, we will agree with you.
Obviously.
Right. We will all agree with you here. But the reality is, you chose to give her that access to your resources. She could not have done what she did if you had not chosen to give her the access in the first place.
And a lot of guys that get duped, they don't know. Some guys know this. Some guys like me had no clue it was this bad. I had no clue about the laws, how I could be, made and put into involuntary servitude through so-called marriage. No idea.
So who's actually smarter? The guys who see this happen to other men and say, I'm not doing that. Or the men who forge in saying, oh, it's not gonna affect me. I'm better. I know how to do this. And then they get their butts handed to them. It's actually very intelligent to observe others and see danger and go the other direction. What's the measure of intelligence here, folks?
But Steve, this Plutarch guy, he married a woman. Doesn't he know better?
No. He mitigated his risk. He followed his heart. He put controls in place so he could do a risky activity and survive.
And yes, I did just call myself the dumbest man of the group. And I know I did that.
See, he's not even getting mad at me when I said how it is.
Look, I did it, and I know I did it. And you know, my defense is what it is. It was like, oh, well, that was a requirement to bring her into the country so I could keep working and making a living. Yeah, okay. That is all true.
But no kid.
Well, that's the trade-off. There's no kids. So I took away a bunch of her leverage in a divorce. And I mean,
Correct.
I think we calculated it's almost 2/3 of the leverage is the kids.
And that's so sad.
Yeah. And so but it was like, that's the trade-off is, yeah, I married her. Yeah, she gets access to resources. She just doesn't have access to kids because I can't afford to take that risk.
Back to an earlier point. If the kids were your property, then there'd be no leverage that she would get.
If the kids were my property, Elena and I would have 3 with a 4th on the way by now.
Exactly. So this idea of a child being the property of a father is actually not a bad thing. People can absolutely belong to another person.
It's the natural law.
Which, when we got rid of slavery, we got rid of this whole concept that, and it bled over into the marital relationship, the structure of that, where women no longer believe they belong to the man. It upset the whole hierarchy. Now, I'm not advocating that we go back to that. Okay, can I just observe a consequence and an impact without advocating a return to something that I don't want?
Well,
okay.
I think, Steve, you're trying.
Christendom did not have that relation.
True.
That did not exist the majority of Christendom.
Oh, well, and wasn't even because I'm thinking back, you know, the Deuteronomy, butchered that word, the Deuteronomy with the, you know, you had to have the Jubilee and all the debt. Like, even back then, yeah, you might be somebody's property, but there was a limit of time on it. It wasn't. So this chattel slavery that we developed for a while probably wasn't Christian, but then we took that idea and we said, oh, well, you can't have that ever. Well, that exact logic is why my kids are no longer my property, yet they're still my responsibility.
I'm going to argue against that. I think it always existed, and it existed throughout most of Christianity, because you had a monarchy, you had peasants who belonged
they
to
had freedom.
Limited. They couldn't go wherever they want. They couldn't do whatever job they wanted. In Russia, you had what was it, the serfs? No, they didn't call them serfs. What did they call them, Plutarch?
I don't know. I don't know what word you're looking for.
But they belonged. They were basically workers on the land, and they had limited autonomy. There was a strict hierarchy. There was the concept of a free man. A free man could travel basically because he had permission to travel across borders. Was a Freemason, basically. He could go from area to area and work on the cathedrals. There have been very big limitations on people's freedom throughout most of human history.
Right. I'm talking about something different here, and the slavery thing kind of got off track towards the end of it, and that's
okay. I agree.
You know, because towards the end of it, you were talking about not just this not just a hierarchy, but going back to the Webster definition, I think, which is a good
there's a
place to go.
continuum here.
Right. Well, but
And
Steve, I know you wanted to
there's a
push back, but I was going to make a
conceptual thing.
point. I was going to
Yeah,
make
okay.
a point, and that point is we cut off that far, we'll call it the far right tail of slavery, that just that horrible bit, and we started there, but we didn't stop there. Okay, and so then we looked at and we cut off the horrible tale of chattel slavery, where kings in Africa are rounding up people from other tribes and putting them on ships, right? Not a good practice. The Brits were right to put an end to it, and thank God they did. Okay, pretty hard to create a biblical justification for that practice, I think. So we took that one bad idea, generated this entire biblical justification that may or may not actually be supported in the Bible, but we created one out of whole cloth, and then we started applying it to all relationships, the husband-wife relationship, the
Jacobinism,
yeah,
Marxism, yeah, it's just
right,
equality across the board. There is no hierarchy except when the state
but
tells you.
with children, this gets interesting, because I am legally responsible for my children until they turn 18, correct? Right. Okay. But
financially responsible.
You are. Yes, you can still be held responsible.
Responsibility without authority equals what, Steve? Come on.
Right.
Slavery. That the legal authority can be taken from you. The financial authority.
Correct.
And
this is my point.
To the state. Yeah.
We have turned children into wards of the state specifically to sever that responsibility, or that authority, not that responsibility.
Without a criminal case.
Correct.
They'll do it administratively. Remove your rights and property which belong to you according to natural law, and then ex post facto say, oh, by the way, it's your natural duty to provide for them.
No, it's not.
So I think Plutarch kind of described it. Let me make it more concise, because I agree with what I think he said.
Yeah, I use too many words.
Yes. There were restrictions on slavery. Justifiably so. We agree with that. But in the process of doing that, they applied this, and it removed concepts of duty, obligation, and authority in many other relationships to our detriment.
Correct. To the point where women can steal resources and use children, not just to sever the authority relationship, but to use children to steal more resources. That is not just what you've actually done. Is you have taken chattel slavery, which I do think is non-biblical, created a biblical justification for why it's bad, and then you turned around and applied it to all other authority relationships, to the point where you have now created a new slave class, and that would be the man. Okay, so we have gone from we created a biblical authority to justify the ending of chattel slavery, and then we used that exact same biblical authority because we couldn't stop ourselves because we were too fucking weak, and then
predicted.
Yes, and then turned it around and used it that exact same biblical authority to create a new slave class. That only ends
to me
in
like you're kind of to extrapolate from this. Advocating for communism leads to the exact thing that you're trying to avoid.
Yes, which is what has happened in every nation that's tried communism ever. You don't get a utopia of personal chefs for everyone. You get a brutal authoritarian regime that's going to kill 100 million people trying to get personal chefs for everyone.
Sounds very Maoist.
I might be referring to a certain leap forward.
Okay, I'm going to go back to Dabney now.
Go ahead.
All right.
Okay.
And I'll reiterate some of the points that Plutarch spoke about. If for no other, that the unsexed politicking woman can never inspire in man that true affection on which marriage should be founded. Men will doubtless be still sensual, but it is simply impossible that they can desire them for the pure and sacred sphere of the wife. Not to you, Plutarch. Let every woman ask herself, will she choose for the Lord of her affections an unsexed, effeminate man? Well, maybe if he has resources. No more can man be drawn to the masculine woman. The mutual attraction of the two complementary halves is gone forever. The abolition of marriage would follow again by another cause. The divergent interests in the rival independence of the two equal wills would be irreconcilable with domestic government or union or peace. Shall the children of this monstrous no union, he calls it a no union. By the way, so you call it a marriage contract. Dabney in the 19th century called it a monstrous no union. Shall the children of this monstrous no union be held responsible to two variant, coordinate, and supreme wills at once? Heaven pity the children. Amen. Heaven pity the children. Shall the two parties to this perpetual co-partnership have neither the power to secure the performance of mutual duties? Well, the woman does, right? Nor to dissolve it? It is a self-contradiction and impossible absurdity. Such a co-partnership of equals with independent interest must be separable at will. No fault divorce, guys. Except the man's usually at fault. In the eyes of the state, not in reality. Okay. Of equals with an independent interest must be separable, will, as all other such co-partnerships are. The only relation between the sexes which will remain will be a cohabitation, continuing so long as the convenience or caprice of both parties may suggest. And this will this with most will amount to a vagrant concubinage. Notice the term here, vagrant concubinage. I think he's using it more of just of sexual convenience, but there it's insidious, this concubinage. Once the female sex is viewed as more equal than the man, it's actually a male concubinage and of the slavish sort. But
Oh, he
now,
also
what will
called
be?
it up above there.
Yes.
He called it a co-partnership.
Yeah.
Now, is that word partner
Yeah.
entered into our vocabulary? This is my
has.
partner.
Oh, so
Okay.
silly.
Okay, that's kind of confirming that Dabney saw the future. If
19th
your significant other refers to you as a partner and you get married, it's most likely going to be a vagrant concubinage.
Absolutely. Very spot on, Steve. I had that thought in the back of my head, and thank you for pointing it out. But now, what will be the character of the children reared under such a domestic organization as this? If human experience has established anything at all, it is the truth of the principle announced by the Hebrew prophet when it declared that the great aim of God in ordaining a permanent marriage tie between one man and one woman was that he might seek a godly seed. Steve, do you have a godly seed?
Oh, here, Nick, I was going to take a break. I have no seed.
Okay.
I have two
I
adopted
hope-
daughters, though. What?
I had a godly
They're far
seed.
away,
I don't
and I
know.
haven't talked to them in 20 years, so it is what it is.
Yep. God's ordinance, the only effective human ordinance for checking and curbing the first tendencies to evil, is domestic parental government, father rule. When the family should no longer have a head, father rule, and the great foundation for the subordination of children and the mother's example is gone. When the mother have found another sphere than her home for her energies, like single mothers, right? When she'll have exchanged the sweet charities of domestic love and sympathy for the fierce passions of the hustings. When families shall be disrupted at the caprice of either party and the children scattered as foundlings from their hearthstone, it requires no wisdom to see that a race of sons will be reared nearer akin to devils than to men, in the hands of such a bastard progeny. Without discipline, without homes, without a God, the last remains of social order will speedily perish and society will be overwhelmed in savage anarchy. Last, it should not be hard to show, did space permit, that this movement on the part of these women is as suicidal as it is mischievous. Its certain result will be the re-enslavement of women, not under scriptural bonds of marriage, but under the yoke of literal corporeal force. I'm afraid to say it might be coming. The pendulum can
Might be.
swing way too far. Yep.
It's coming, and you can't stop it. This is where I lose it with the enjoy the decliners, because the one thing that I can tell you about life is that it changes, and the change is not always more of the same. Just worse. No, things that were cease frequently. Look at the arc of civilization and empire. Rome was the biggest empire for many hundreds of years. Now, Italy can barely keep itself afloat. Look at why, and so and that's, but the enjoy the decliners will say, yeah, see, Italy died, Rome died, right, and a new empire came up, right? There's not an end to it. You just need to figure out where the puck is going next. And when it comes to these situations, I think Dabney is absolutely correct here. The women will end up not in the bounds of a marriage with a man who actually cares about them, but in the tender embrace of the state that has no purpose for them. Because the women that we're mostly talking about here are not the young women with all the sexual agency. No, we're talking about the 40 plus crowd, the unmarried 40 plus. And we've talked about this before in other settings. One of the things that we have to grapple with as I was going to say nation, but there are many nations with this problem, is what do we do with all of the single ladies who have no children and no ability to have children? We have no real work for them. AI is going to replace the jobs they did first before it replaces any other job. So we have no work
I'm
for
already
them.
using it to replace so much work. I have
Right.
no idea.
Right. But it's the email jobs that go first. Not even, people are freaking about the programmer jobs. And yeah, there's stuff going on there, but we still need programmers to lead the AIs around because they don't think. But
Hey, men get old too.
yeah, but we work them to death.
I have an answer to that. Okay, I'm 63. I'm still working. I can still do my job driving a truck. When I deliver to grocery stores, in many cases, the guys who are there early in the morning to receive the groceries and go stock the shelves, you know what? They're older than me.
Yep.
Many of them are in their 70s, even pushing close to 80. Okay, you know what? They're there. They do the work, the physical work. So a man, the majority of men can easily work till they're 75 and be productive. Find a productive job to get paid to do it and actually do good work and so forth. I'm not sure that it's true. Oh yes, there are some women who are kind of in the same age range and are working. Uh, but just a week ago, couple 3 weeks ago, one of the ladies at one of the stores I delivered to, she handled the produce. I would guess she was mid to upper 60s, and it was just getting to be too much for her. Joints were aching and whatnot. And it may sound like an easy job, but you got to pick up a box of bananas. That's like 40 pounds. A sack of potatoes. That's 50 pounds. She couldn't do that. And even the lighter stuff, it was taking its toll on her. She decided, no, I'm not going to do it. Well, in most cases, a man of her age can still do that job. I'm not passing judgment. I'm just telling you the way it is.
What I'm trying to take away from this Dabney article is this concept of vagrant concubinage. And while it may not be in the way he suggested, it sure evolved more for the man. Not only what did it become equalite, became man was the male concubine to the woman who was the superior, which is enforced in the guise of the state with the laws that they have. And I'll start sharing this. Now I go to Heinrich I. Raman, is translated by that guy. And he wrote this in 1946. He fled Mustache Man, Germany. Um, so you can't attribute that to him. He says, so, history moves on a bit, right? History moves on. These equalitarian ideas move forward in society. And he's observing what happens in society in regards also to marriage and natural law. He says the so-called marriage that legally existed for a while, he calls it again, so-called marriage that legally existed for a while in Soviet Russia was rejected. This is early 20th century, was rejected by the more or less Christian West. Why? Oh, they had a moral backing. Because it was not distinguishable from concubinage. Not of the more slavish sort, but it was based on a measurement by the idea of marriage, which is expressed and exemplified in the positive legal institutions of these codes. And another, I just summed it up for you. He talked about the French Civil Code, matrimonium of Roman law, legislation of Germany, or Anglo-Saxon countries. So to say countries, I put counties, sorry. Another quote, he says, the essential structure of the family, which exists prior to the state, the essential structure of the family, which exists prior to the state, important there, signifies also that the family is an autonomous sphere of right. Parents, especially the father, have natural rights, which the positive law does not confer upon them, but which, as already existent, it protects and guarantees. From the marriage contract spring the natural rights of the husband and wife to each other's person, so that the breach of such rights, adultery, for instance, is accounted unjust in itself and therefore unjust independently of the positive law. Otherwise, why would people have waxed indignant at the early marriage legislation of Soviet Russia? The fact of the matter is that the end or meaning of marriage in the family is independent of the will of the state as well as the will of the parties to the marriage contract. Marriage and the family produce rights and duties that are grounded in the very nature of these institutions. The recognition and juridical whatever relevance of these rights and duties, and not the fiat of the state, make it possible to decide whether in a concrete case marriage or concubinage is present. He taught at Georgetown University and taught law. This was the fact of the case back in the 40s and 50s. You have an autonomous sphere of right, especially the husband, over your children. It's not due to the fiat of the state. That means your administrative, tyrannical abomination, which kidnaps children from fathers today, is exactly that. It's an abomination. They have usurped the natural rights by fiat.
He doesn't say something here, but I'm going to make
But he
that
talks
point.
about concubinage. There's a distinction between marriage or concubinage.
Yeah. But Nick, there's also another thing he's not saying. Marriage existed prior to the church.
Yeah, he kind of said that. It exists prior to the state, in a sense. He's speaking about natural law in regards to the state, not so much the
right.
church.
The state. Okay,
Yeah.
let's think about the state, the official legal stamp of approval, which at throughout history sometimes was solely the church or church governance. Sometimes, and since the Reformation has been the governmental state. Marriage existed before that.
Yeah.
Marriage
It's
existed
creation.
before Jesus Christ walked on this earth.
Absolutely.
So to say that the church can bless, marry you, whatnot, but without the church, marriage still exists. Marriage, the institution of marriage, is older than the church because marriage existed from the beginning. The concept
not
of one man, one woman. The man shall leave his father and mother and cleave to his wife, and the two shall become one. I don't know. And that's from Genesis, and it was referred to again in the New Testament. Nick would know the place.
Yeah. Genesis 2, Genesis 3, where everything is broken and, okay, whatever. God said, don't listen to the woman, you rule over her, etc. And, there's Numbers 30, which gives the rights of husbands and fathers over the woman. Okay. And 1 Corinthians 11 gives you the structure.
Right. So, I mean, there's a thread that's woven through the Bible of marriage. I mean, it's natural law. It's what we were put on earth to do. Remember, mankind is made in the image and likeness of God. God is the creator. Man and women are the procreators. Gee, kind of sounds similar on a lesser scale. Takes marriage, takes a union of man and woman. We know from evolutionary psychology or whatever secular crap is out there that, human child is actually different than most animals because They can't walk, they can't feed themselves. That takes them a lot of time to develop. So they need a mother and a father for, well, probably about 12 years minimum to grow up enough to survive on their own. Now, at 12 years, yeah, they can probably fend for themselves. We've extended that to 18, maybe a little bit longer, but that's what's required. And where the hell did we get this idea that a woman can raise children on her own with just the financial resources of a man? That just trivializes the role of men.
It's based
It
on this
is
concept too.
absurd.
You turn vagrant concubinage, which is different from marriage, into a more insidious part of concubinage where you call it marriage, but it's really not. It's actually worse than concubinage. It's vagrant, but actually it's the enslaving of the man to the woman under the state, which is even further than Raman even, I would say, perhaps anticipated. Now we're coming closer to the end, guys. Now we're going to get to some of the more insidious stuff in Stephen Baskerville's book, Taken into Custody: The War Against Fathers, Marriage, and the Family. And he picks up some of these concepts that we've been talking about here. I'll stop sharing this and I'll pick up a few of these here and there. He has a quote. He quotes Bay McFarlane. And Bay McFarlane says, "Parents have the natural right to be with their own children unless they are guilty of some egregious act. Stealing children from their own parents has historically been considered one of the most inhumane acts of tyrannical dictators. Slave owners sold the children of their own slaves to other men. Today, we are appalled by the knowledge of such inhumanity." On the same page, Baskerville writes, "Divorce dissolves a private household, usually against the wishes of one spouse. It inevitably involves the state, including police and prisons, to enforce the divorce and the post-marriage order. Otherwise, one spouse might continue to claim the protections and prerogatives of private life, the right to live in the common home, to possess the common property, or most vexing of all, to parent the common children." He also writes on page 80, Malcolm X once described family court as modern slavery, and the Supreme Court Justice Abe Fortas characterized them with the term kangaroo courts. Though the system for adjudicating family law is different in each jurisdiction, the essential pattern is similar. Family courts describe themselves as courts of equity, or more pretentiously, chancery rather than law. Strikingly, they do not consider themselves necessarily bound by due process of law, including the Bill of Rights, nor are the rules of evidence as stringent as in criminal courts. As one father reports being told by the chief investigator for the administrator of the courts in New Jersey investigating a complaint of judicial wrongdoing, quote, "The provisions of the U.S. Constitution do not apply in domestic relations cases since they are determined in a court of equity rather than a court of law." Page 91. It's a rather further quote. It's a longer quote, guys, from Baskerville, and he's quoting somebody else as well. He says, "Fathers relate that hearings typically lasted between 30 seconds and 2 minutes, during which they are sentenced to months in jail or prison. Lawrence County was apparently jailing fathers with no hearings at all. Nothing indicates that Pennsylvania is unusual. After a decade of hysteria over deadbeat dads, 100 such prisoners in each of the America's 3,000 counties is by no means unlikely. Though the men were released, it is not the end of their ordeal. The incarceration costs many their jobs and thus their ability to pay future child support. As a result, most will be returned to the penal system, from which they are unlikely ever to escape. Rendered permanent insolvent by the incarceration, they are farmed out to trash companies and similar concerns where they work 14 to 16-hour days. Most of their earnings are confiscated for child support, the cost of their incarceration, and mandatory drug testing. The practice is strikingly reminiscent of the Soviet forced labor system, described by Karl Friedrich and Zbigniew Brzezinski in their classic study of totalitarianism. Quote, not infrequently, the secret police hired out its prisoners to local agencies for the purpose of carrying out some local project. Elaborate contracts were drawn up, specifying all the details and setting the rates at which the secret police is to be paid. At the conclusion of their task, the prisoners, or more correctly, the slaves, were returned to the custody of the secret police. Oh, I'll keep going to towards the end here. Baskerville again. Depicting marriage as a man's ball and chain used to be a joke, but any man who glances at one Yahoo.com discussion group will certainly have second thoughts about placing his head in a noose. Discussants are candid about celebrating the power of women to use their children and the divorce courts to turn their husbands into quote unquote slaves. It's Baskerville. The group describes itself as, and this is a quote from the group, a serious and supportive discussion forum for divorced or legally separated women to discuss how they have used divorce, child support, alimony, and the courts to make their ex-husbands their financial slaves. Also, how ex-wives have used the psychology of divorce to turn their ex-husbands into servants and slaves for their own amusement and enrichment. A forum for women to share their success stories in humiliating and bankrupting ex-husbands and then moving on with their ex's money to better relationships with more attractive men. Humiliation, revenge, female power, female financial domination. No doubt about it, for many women, divorce can be the road to the easy life and wealth and riches. And the beauty of it all is that it's all done at the expense of your ex, who is now your financial slave. The list is about placing your ex in psychological and financial bondage. Discuss the tactics and laugh about it here. End quote.
Here's the funny part, Nick. I'm the guy with two ex-wives.
Yeah.
Okay. They wanted to financially enslave me, keep me paying. They wanted me in jail to penalize me and deprive me of my job. And they wanted me dead. All at the same time. If I'm dead, I can't pay. If I'm in jail, I can't pay. But
They don't think about
make my
they don't
life so difficult that it makes it difficult for me to pay. I still have to pay. What? It doesn't make sense.
Steve, stop expecting the rational from the fundamentally irrational.
Oh, okay. I knew someone would jump in and explain it.
Well, by the way, guys, here's the thing. Baskerville does describe the legal reality here, pages 97 to 99 of his book. I'm not going to quote it all here, but there's the 13th Amendment, right? You're not supposed to be subjected to all these things, right? I'll actually just pull it up, my 13th Amendment. Yeah, so full text. neither slavery nor involuntary servitude, except as a punishment for crime whereof the party shall have been duly convicted, shall exist within the United States or any place subject to their jurisdiction. Congress shall have power to enforce this article by appropriate legislation. Okay, so it's not supposed to exist, but it exists. But, natural law doesn't exist for the marriage, right? But I'll find the quote here. This is insidious. All right. I'll talk about the Kaczynski case. Judge Alex Kaczynski of the Ninth Circuit U.S. Court of Appeals, writing for a unanimous panel in March 1999, argues that not all forced employment is constitutionally prohibited. Kaczynski points out that sailors who desert ships, soldiers who refuse to serve, and unspecified others have been imprisoned and blah, blah, blah. We conclude that child support awards fall within that narrow class of obligation that may be enforced by means of imprisonment without violating the constitutional prohibition against slavery. Kaczynski writes in a related case, this is Baskerville, Kaczynski graciously opines that deadbeats deserve a kick in the pants, right? Okay. So it's interesting, right? So we have a regime of involuntary divorce, Baskerville says, forcible removal of children, coerced child support, and knowingly false accusations is now warping our entire legal system, undermining and overturning principles of common law that have protected individual rights for centuries. Right? Okay. But in the Kaczynski case, they talk about, natural obligation or social obligation, right, of the husband. But wait, natural law doesn't exist in the marriage, but now ex post facto, you want the duties of the husband to apply once you've kidnapped his kids without a criminal case. In
Kaczynski
violation of natural law.
is a fucking idiot or a shyster. So he is calling on the example of a a maritime sailor or a military person. Guess what? That's not employment. There's an oath involved into getting onto that ship and serving on that ship or being in the military. You are serving your oath. Have you ever taken an oath of employment?
Sign a contract, dissolvable at will.
That's a contract. That's not an oath.
I think what Steve is getting at is when you take, and I've seen this a lot from retired service members from the military, is my oath was to the Constitution and there is no limitation on it. Which what they're saying is my job as a service member, even though I may not be currently employed as a service member, is to uphold the Constitution. You'll see this a lot with guys, talking
your
about
oath extends beyond a contract. Right. If it's an employment contract, it has actual terms of bilateral terms and a termination date. An oath is really an obligation of one party to the other without a defined termination within the oath itself.
Yes,
it's a different creature.
Right. An oath can be fulfilled. Like there can be a termination state to it. Usually that's agreed upon by both parties once they get to that termination state. But like the military oath, there's no termination clause in it. There's no defined exits in it.
Exactly. Servitude under an oath is different than employment. And so for some fucking judge to equate the two, you're a fucking idiot or you're a shyster.
By the way, they already kidnapped the kids without due judicial process used through administrative courts. Well, and you don't have the right, you do not have a right, by the way, in all of this, to a jury.
Well, it's been my observation from being in court.
You don't have right. You're not a citizen. You fathers and husbands are not a citizen. You don't have rights in the view of these administrative shyster courts. You are a slave. You are a
Okay,
concubine.
what are courts and lawyers there for? To serve the process. Okay, I've been in court a few times, mostly due to divorce, custody issues, or complaints related to those. They don't give your lawyer, the prosecutor, the judge don't give a flying fuck about justice.
No.
They really don't give a
Contrary to
flying
natural
fuck about the law. All they care
don't.
about is the process.
And the money.
Oh, yeah.
Section 4, Title 4D, 4E money for enslaving the breadwinner, right? You get more money
Or
if he's matching
or
federal
your
funds.
lawyer increasing his billable hours.
Oh gosh, that happens a lot.
You're lucky
All right.
to pull down 30 to 40 bucks an hour. Gross. You're paying him 500 bucks an hour? Yeah.
And they make up reasons to bill you too. They don't do jack crap. They just waste your time. A lot of it. It's a business. It's an abomination. I'll give you the last basketball quote here that I have. Summoning citizens who are charged with no legal wrongdoing and seizing control of their children, homes, property, movements, and persons is not justice or the rule of law. It is something close to terror. Some contend this is an unavoidable part of the divorce process, but if so, we need a thorough discussion of precisely how much government intrusion and coercion are we willing to accept in the name of divorce, and how far are we willing to impose repressive measures on citizens whose only offense is their refusal to cooperate in the abrogation of their marriage or the confiscation of their children. You don't have these rights. You're not a citizen. You are not a free person. The purpose of the system is what it does. So therefore, by signing the marriage contract and especially having kids, you are literally a male concubine in the laws that they can apply to you while you're married and into the divorce process with plundering your estate, kidnapping your kids, all contrary to natural law, because they don't view you as a husband, a father. They don't view you as the head of the household, as a superior. They don't view you as a citizen. They view you indeed as what you are, a male concubine. And hence, once that relation of marriage has been severed, you're no longer a male concubine, but what you are without the benefits of concubinage, a slave.
Hey, Plutarch.
Sir.
It's grave injustice. What should we do about it? Collectively, as men, what do we need to do about this?
Nothing.
Oh, what? Nothing? Why?
Well, okay. You can say that by choosing not to marry women, you are making a choice. But sometimes the right choice is to sit back and go, no, I will not give you what you demand. And look, guys, I fully expect that within the next few years, you're going to see it was very white pilling to watch people piling on Elon. There were a lot of people who were like, Elon, you're out to lunch with this UBI thing. But the reality is we already have it. Look at the cradle to grave welfare for 40% of the US population. The labor force participation rate is 61.3%. So 38.7% of the population doesn't work. A larger percentage of those are men than women. Or sorry, other way around. a larger percentage of those are women, not men. Okay. We already have UBI for women. And so what I think is going to happen next is they're going to say, well, marriage rates are falling. We've got all these women, particularly these millennials who women who are transitioning to menopause and are unable to have children and have no utility to a man anywhere, and AI has destroyed their jobs. They're going to come to us and they're going to say, well, you men, we have to increase your taxes because we got to cover these women. And so that, it's not do nothing. It's do nothing for the benefit of a woman.
Okay.
We've said don't go get the fancy job. Why? Because you'll pay more in tax.
Okay, let me go. I knew that's what you were going to say.
Of course you did.
Okay. I'm not going to play this. This is Better Bachelor. The thumbnail. Angry men are entirely quitting the system.
Good for them.
And then, okay, the other title is A Society Without the Working Man Will Fail. But they, meaning men, no longer have a choice. It's happening. Men can't see a path forward in the job market nor in marriage. They're just not, okay, this isn't working. So they're not doing it. And just watch how much complaints that from women, oh, men are not showing up. They're not doing this. They're not doing that. Okay. And then, oh, yes, you're going to tax men to pay for the women. That's not going to work. Because all of a sudden you're not paying the native white guy Americans. You're not hiring them. You're employing people from other countries. H-1B visas. Guys 40 years younger than me with my same color skin are not being hired. Because you'd have to pay them starting, I don't know, 60, 70, 80 grand. And then after 10 years, they're up over 100 grand. You can hire an H-1B from India or China or whatever for 30, 40 grand. And that's what they're doing. So, yes, number one, there's no incentive for us to show up because if we work hard and get a family and provide and have our kids, you know what? They're going to be taken from us. And then on top of that, you're hiring foreigners instead of hiring me. So how the hell can I provide for diddly squat even if I decided to get married? The system is fucked. So you don't have to do anything. All you got to do is sit back and watch. Because at this point, you cannot save where we're going. You can't change it. The Titanic is headed for that iceberg.
Right. Hell, concubinage exists, guys. That's the term for men that's the term for men legally under the so-called marriage contract. And you can see that in the purpose of the system by actually making you an involuntary servant, a slave, the literal ball and chain, forced to do these things while your children have been kidnapped. And so, yeah, the system is fucked. It's not the way I wanted it to be. It's not what I wish. It is what is. It's not a what if. It's not a make a wish type thing. It's just This is the reality, the abomination of the reality that we are living in. And may God change it.
Oh, are you sure, Nick? You know what? Won't things get better when gas prices get back under $3 a gallon?
No, everything will stay inflated.
Will gas prices get back under $3 a gallon?
I don't know.
I don't
Maybe
know
for 6
either.
months. Maybe for 6 months. I don't know.
Yes, they won't stay there. That's so the gas price as we go through the crash and recession. Yes, gas prices, because that's demand destruction. There, one way to solve the square the circle here is to just literally, oh well, we took 13 million barrels of oil off the market, so we will destroy demand to fit inside that new. That's one way to do it. I'm not recommending it, but okay. But eventually the recession will end and the demand will come back, and then what are you going to do? I think we actually fracture the markets before then. But
My point of that is no, we're not going back to normal. We're not going back to the way things were in January
no
2026. No, we're never going back there. Just like we're never going back to the normal that was pre-COVID. Nope, we're never going back there. Everything's going to be different. It will get better. It'll get worse. It'll get better, but we're never going back. No, we're never going back to the stability of the 1950s. Nope, not going to happen. Things could get better, but they're not going back to that. They're not going back to anything recent historical.
Well, Steve, you're actually making the same point I made earlier about the enjoy the decliners. There are moments in history where things change, and whatever was before is not going forward. Okay, the enjoy the decliners would tell you, oh well, things are just going to get worse from here. The trajectory stays the same. No, the trajectory of human history is constantly back and forth. It goes all over the place. And every 100 years or so, we kick ourselves onto a new trajectory. It's just what we do. We've done it for millennia. I can trace it back to the Old Testament of the Bible. So that's what, 5,000 years. Okay. So this whole idea that things are just going to steadily collapse into nothingness is wrong. But here's what that idea does, and I think this is something that Dabney would appreciate, is it convinces you not to fight it. The purpose of saying enjoy the decline is to convince you to not fight. And I've consistently said this. I want a seat at the table for whatever comes next, because there will be something that comes next. Look, we can't solve this male concubinage problem if we've all decided that the world is going to literally end in fire, and all we need to do is to just watch from watch from a window, right? Yeah. One thing I can be very sure of is that male concubinage will not be solved, and the world will not end in fire. And so now you've got people being enslaved to a system because you sat back and did nothing. No. Get out there, fight this shit. For a lot of you, that's just going to look like having conversations with people, enlightening them. They don't know. They just don't know. We were talking about this before Steve and I, before the stream. 90% of people have no clue what's going on. Talk to them. I guarantee you, every one of you knows many of them.
Okay, I have an eschatological question. When they form this table, is this going to be before or after the rapture? So are the evangelicals going to have a seat?
No. That ticket is pretty much on its way out with the boomers and rapidly disintegrating.
It really
I call
is.
myself, I believe in the gospel. I'm an evangelical in that sense, but I'm a traditional Protestant, you know, not
And I'm
this
a Catholic. I
dispensationalist
don't believe in
bullcrap,
the
you know.
rapture. Nick doesn't believe in the rapture. Neither does Plutarch. So, I like to interject a little bit of levity into these discussions because there's plenty of Christians who are not of the evangelical belief in this third temple eschatological whatever.
I would say
There
the
are,
vast majority don't believe it.
Just come and go. America is not the be all end all of all human civilization. Get over it. And guess what? It might go down for a time, but also might enter a new phase of existence.
I
through
I mean
all the
I've
through all the crazy crap that's going on. They someone to take the reins of control. You know, the republic ended in Rome and it turned into an empire.
right.
Okay.
And I've said that before. I don't think that this is the end of the United States. I think the United States is in this cycle but in the 2030s, you'll see the United States become an empire, a true empire of vassal states. I think Europe is going to really hate what they've done to themselves over the past 70 years because they're going to be our vassal states. We paid tribute to them, and I've said this on our finance and geopolitics shows. We paid tribute to our vassal states. Yeah, that's going to work in reverse.
yeah. Well, I don't know if we're in the end times. Don't really care. I'm 63. Got another 10, 20, maybe 30 years to go. So I'm definitely in my end times.
So that's why, but that's why, Steve, the evangelicals are all, the end times are here because they're all old enough to say, yeah, well, I get to check out on my way out. Oh, what a bunch of cowards, retarded cowards. Sorry. I have no respect for people who are like, oh yeah, the end times will happen right as I slip into old age and death. Yeah, shut the fuck up, you cowards.
Build what you can, do what you can, fight for what is right. It may not come to anything in 5 or 10 years, and there's no guarantee we'll come to anything, but God sees your work. Do your work, fight for what is true. God will reward your endeavor.
What other choice do you have? Just do the right thing to keep your conscience mostly clear. It really doesn't do you that much good to get ahead by lying, cheating, and stealing or bearing false witness. I'm not going to do it. I said this, wrote this in a letter to my second ex-wife. I'm trying to think. I'd rather honorably lose than win by dishonor or something like that.
Oh, you're just
Yeah,
describing Republicans right now.
Okay, well, I can lose as long as I stuck to my principles, didn't lie, tried my best. Okay, I lost. Great. Okay, fine. I can live with that.
Sound
But
like
I
Robert
do
E.
not
Lee.
want to win by dishonorable means. Women, they don't. Okay, I'm not accusing them of doing the opposite. They just don't see things the same way. They don't put it into those terms.
This is why they must not rule.
Well, yeah, I was being somewhat tongue in cheek because the Republicans have kind of over the past few months earned the title of beautiful losers for their inability to do anything. But that's when you dig into that, it's not a problem of morals and honor being bad. It's a problem of they don't have any, which is a very human failing.
Yeah.
So I was being somewhat tongue in cheek with Steve there earlier. And Steve, I think you knew that.
Yeah. If Republicans applied their principles, they could not support the things that are happening.
Yes. Andrew left a couple cool comments on this vein. Right, never going back. And that's why the GOP and conservatives always lose, because they think they can go back and sell going back to the 1950s as their platform. Yeah, guys, that isn't how this works. You only move forward in time. Now, just because you only move forward doesn't mean that decline has to be the only option. There can be renewal. But I've said this before. What that renewal looks like is up to the people who show up for it, right? They get to decide what that renewal looks like. And if people like us and the red pill and Christians and whatnot, if we say, nah, I'm just going to sit here and watch it all burn. Well, you will burn, but only because you gave your seat to somebody else who wanted you to burn for it. Don't burn for it.
I mean, as a good Republican, I want to go back to the lifestyle of the 1950s, where women stayed in the home and raised children and all that stuff. But I want to empower women where they can go and get an education and they can do whatever they want to do. And they should have more equality and all this stuff. And yet I still want to live like it's 1950s.
Rinse and repeat.
You can't.
See, it doesn't work.
It doesn't work.
You can't go back.
No, you go forward. All you can do is choose how you go forward, what forward looks like. That's what we're here for.
Conservatism. Charging forward with your agenda that is good in the sight of God.
Amen. Have we beat
Nick.
this one?
Oh, yeah. I was just going to ask, Nick, did we cover everything?
Oh, we covered it and more. Male concubinage exists. That's what modern marriage is in the sight of the legal system, which is the end of, we see the divorce, the laws for marriage, and then the end result with the divorce is actually your enslavement. Don't buy it. Do what you can. Be smart. Don't be duped. We've said a lot in this stream. Please rewatch it. Thank you guys for listening. We'll probably be on here on Saturday, I believe, and I'm sure at Lena's Bar Fitness. We'll probably have a very fun and interesting topic. Have lots of fun, right?
You have to say it that way, because that's what she always says, right?
Yeah.
We're going to have fun, guys.
I don't know what the topic is, but we'll probably find out after the stream. And thank you guys for listening. Please like, share, subscribe. There's some really important truths here that men need to hear. It's really crucially important because you don't know. A lot of men don't. Well, some men know. Some men are being duped and don't know what they could be signing up for.
All right.
Thank you, guys. We'll see you next time.
Bye.
There was a firefight! Resurgence!